of the different subtypes of cancer genes so that we have a better understanding about the mechanism by which they are responsible for causing development of cancers as and when they are not functioning properly. Now, when we talk about the cancer genes, as is what is being the latest concept, we are having four important categories of the cancer genes, as I have tried to highlight over here with the help of this diagram. The first one happens to be the one which is red in color, which is a proto-oncogene, what you can actually see over here, friends. So proto-oncogenes are actually normal genes of the cell, and they are responsible for increasing the rate of cell replication. Whenever there is going to be a mutation in these genes, the problem is that these genes are going to become overactive. In terms of genetics, any gene which is becoming overactive after mutation, we are using the term gain of function mutation. Now, you can just remember that with the help of a simple corollary that I can share with you. In our routine lives, we are driving, let's say, a vehicle. And let me say we are talking about a vehicle which is having the brakes as well as accelerator. So, proto-oncogenes will behave in the same fashion just like an accelerator of a car. If it becomes overactive, if the accelerator is going to become overactive, the car would run faster. Similarly, if the proto-oncogene is going to get activated, gain of function mutation, the cell is going to replicate fastly. And now this proto-oncogene actually is going to be getting converted into what is being given the name of an oncogene. Now you understand the simple fact that in a car, if you are having two accelerators and even if one of them happens to be overactive, then the car is going to run faster. That means in a cell, even if one copy or one allele of the proto-oncogene is becoming overactive, then there is high chances of development of cancer over here. If you correlate it with normal genetics, if you are having one gene mutation and there is an expression of a disease, this is what is classically associated with a dominant kind of a gene effect. So oncogenes are derived from proto-oncogenes. Remember, a single gene mutation can be responsible for causing a cancer, and what we need to remember over here is that this is going to be associated with, usually in the normal cell, physiologically that is a proto-oncogene, but the altered form is given the name of oncogene, and that is what is going to be having a dominant effect. The second category of genes that we talk about are given the name of tumor suppressor genes, what I have been showing over here in the green color. Tumor suppressor genes are going to be genes which are responsible for causing in a normal cell reduction in the replication rate. It is also associated with cell differentiation, also associated to some extent with the function of DNA repair. All in all, this group of genes are responsible for causing a reduction in the chances of development of a tumor. So that is why the name tumor suppressor genes. Now the point that we need to understand is that in a cell, we have got two copies or two alleles of a gene. It is just like a brake of a car. Now if there is one brake of a car which is inactive, which has failed, you have a second brake to protect yourself. So similarly, in a cell, if one copy of the gene is going to get inactivated or deleted, there is a second copy which is going to take over. But if both the copies are going to get mutated, then the chances of development of tumor becomes exceptionally high. So this is what I wanted to understand as a concept, that in case of tumor suppressor gene, both the copies are supposed to be altered or mutated, only then the cell is going to transform into a tumor cell. Because both the copies are going to get mutated over here, so this is what is being given the alternative name of the two-hit or the double-hit hypothesis. Now, one of the recent things that we have understood over here as a concept is that whenever we are talking about the tumor suppressor genes are subdivided into two categories. One which is being given the name of the guardian category, guardians. So guardians, just like you and my guardians, our parents, our well-wishers, our caretakers, there is going to be a gene which is a tumor suppressor gene which is acting like a guardian. These genes are actually going to be functioning as DNA damage sensors. So whenever there is a DNA damage, they will sense it, they will try to repair it, and that is how they will try to restore the normal functioning of the cell. Remember, for an MCQ exam, the guardian of the genome or the caretaker of the genome is the name that you associate with a gene which is going to be given the name of the P53 gene. The second category of or second example of the tumor suppressor genes that I want you to be familiar with, friends, is what is going to be given the name of governors. Governors. Now when we are talking about governors are the actual tumor suppressor genes which are acting as brakes for the reducing the rate of cell replication. So in a normal cell, the most important governor which is going to control the rate of cell replication, and that's another important MCQ that they love to go after in the exam. This is what you will be answering in the board question as the RB gene. So governor of cell replication is RB and guardian of the genome is what you need to remember as P53. Not to forget, both the copies need to be mutated in order for a normal cell to get converted into a cancer cell. The third category of genes that I wanted to be familiar with over here are given the name of regulators of apoptosis. Whenever there is a DNA damage, the cell will try to repair its DNA. If the DNA gets repaired, perfectly fine, no problems. If the DNA is not correctly repaired, then this cell will become mutated, and we do not want to have a survival of a mutated cell. So what will the body do? The body will try to induce the death of the mutated cell. And the mechanism by which you induce the death of a cell, the programmed cell death, is what is given the name of apoptosis. So genes which control apoptosis do have a very important role in the pathogenesis or development of cancers. There is a new category of genes which have been given in the latest edition of our textbook, which are the genes which are given the name of regulators of host and tumor cells. These are the genes which are primarily going to be responsible for causing the interaction between the tumor cells and the host immune cells. So usually you would expect the mutated cells to be destroyed by the immune cells of the body. But there are certain genes which are not going to function properly, because of which the altered cells or the tumor cells are going to be having a better survival. So those are the four categories of genes about which we need to have a basic idea, and then we proceed with the mechanism as to how the genetic mutations are going to take place. The mutations in the cancer genes can be subdivided into two categories, one which are being given the name of driver mutations and the second one which are being given the name of passenger mutations. Now just like our routine life, you see, when you are traveling in a bus, the main guy who is driving the bus, that's a driver. So similarly, the main mutation which is actually going to be responsible for causing development of the cancer, that is what is being given the name of a driver mutation. So driver mutation, as the name gives you a hint, D for driver, D for this one is directly responsible for causing the development of the cancer. But as in a bus, you would have certain passengers also. So just like that, in this kind of a cell, there will be presence of certain what we call as passive or neutral mutations which are not directly responsible for causing cancer, but they are also additionally seen. Now what is the concept or what is the significance of knowing about these passenger mutations? You see, the point that I want you to understand is, you have a normal cell. Driver mutations will convert a normal cell into a cancer cell. The cancer cell is going to be having multiple passenger mutations. They are not responsible for the pathogenesis of the tumor. But what you now understand is that suppose there was a cancer and you give this individual some kind of a drug, anti-cancer drug or chemotherapy. Out of these four passenger mutations, let me just say, these mutations were responsible for giving a survival advantage to the tumor cell. So now what would happen? All those cancer cells which were having this additional passive mutation, they are going to be having a better survival. And that is what is going to make the tumor cells resistant to the effect of chemotherapy. So please understand the fact, friends, driver mutations are directly responsible for causing cancer. Passenger mutations do not cause directly the development of cancer, but passenger mutations are very, very important for the development of drug resistance that is observed after the administration of chemotherapy. So these are the two types of mutations that we must need to have an idea as a new concept which has been given in our book. We now look at the mechanisms by which the different types of mutations are going to take place. The first mechanism happens to be what is being given the name of a point mutation. Now whenever we are talking about a point mutation, what is basically happening over here is a substitution of an amino acid, and this is what is going to be responsible for causing either overactivity of a gene, or this is going to be responsible for causing an underactivity of a gene. Now suppose we are talking about the overactivity of a gene, and there is an overactivity of, let me say, a proto-oncogene. So just now we talked few minutes back, what was the function of a proto-oncogene? It causes stimulation of cell replication. If it is going to be mutated, cell replicates faster. So point mutation causing overactivity of a proto-oncogene can convert it into an oncogene, and that can be responsible for causing cancer. For your MCQ exam, the commonest point mutation which is going to be associated with the development of a cancer is going to be causing an involvement of a proto-oncogene, and the example of the gene is the RAS gene. On the other hand, if I am talking about a point mutation which causes underactivity of a gene, logically this is going to be causing a suppression of the activity of a tumor suppressor gene. And whenever I am talking about a gene which is going to be affected because of underactivity of point mutation, that is to be remembered as the P53 gene. So commonest point mutation in human cancers with respect to proto-oncogene, RAS. commonest point mutation causing cancers in human beings with respect to tumor suppressor gene, that is P53. When we are talking about the presence of chromosomal abnormalities, chromosomes can be having different types of abnormalities which can be seen by different mechanisms. The first mechanism can be something like gene rearrangement. The gene rearrangement can be seen because of presence of translocations, or there can be something like inversions. Commonest mechanism by which chromosomal abnormalities takes place in case of human cancers, particularly lymphoid cancers, is because of the presence of gene rearrangement which is associated with translocations. Now, whenever there is going to be a translocation, this can be something which can be a very bad news for the cell. Why? Because of three mechanisms. When we are talking about the gene rearrangements, this is associated with three mechanisms. Mechanism number one can be that you can be having an overexpression of an oncogene. Mechanism number two can be that you can be having a presence or formation of a novel or a new type of a protein. And mechanism number three can be that you could be having the inhibition of differentiation. So what I can just make a mention of over here for your better understanding is that whenever we are going to be talking about the chromosomal abnormalities, the chromosomal abnormalities can be responsible for causing either of the three mechanisms. Talking about each of these examples which are very importantly asked in our exams, overactivity of a protein. The first example that I would like you to be familiar with, translocation 1418. Translocation 1418 is going to be responsible for causing overactivity of a molecule given the name of BCL2. BCL2 is going to be overactive in case of which cancer? That's a frequently asked question for your exam. This is what you are going to be answering in the exam as follicular lymphoma. Recall the fact, and that is what you can quite easily correlate with our discussion of something that we talked about in cell injury. BCL2 is an anti-apoptotic protein. If you inhibit apoptosis, the mutated cells are going to be present for a longer duration. So the cancer that is going to be seen because of persistence of the mutated cells in the lymph nodes, that is follicular lymphoma. Possibility number two, you can be having an overactivity of a protein that is associated with translocation 814. Translocation 814, very favorite of your examiners, is going to be associated with overactivity of MYC protein, and this is what is going to be associated with the development of malignancy. The malignancy that I wish you to be familiar with for your exam, this is given the name of Burkitt's lymphoma. So in both these conditions, what I find in my patient is that different types of molecules are going to be having an overexpression, and they are going to be responsible for causing different types of cancers. So the translocations are very important. You also need to remember about the molecule that is becoming overactive in these conditions. What I would also recommend you to be familiar with over here is going to be the expression or the presence of novel proteins. So new types of proteins are sometimes produced because of the chromosomal translocation. Example number one that I can share with you is translocation 922, and they love to go after this particular one in the exam. This is something that you associate with formation of a new type of a chromosome which is given the name of Philadelphia chromosome. Classical example of which is what you associate in a patient suffering from CML. So translocation 922 causes two genes coming together, BCR and the ABL gene. Both of them fuse together. A new type of protein is produced, a novel chimeric protein, and that is going to be responsible for causing CML. Example number two that the examiners love to go after is translocation X18. This is going to be associated with development of a tumor that is going to be given the name of synovial sarcoma. Example number three that I would want you to be familiar with is associated with translocation 113 or translocation 213, in which you are going to be having the involvement of the FOXO gene and the PAX gene. So that is what is going to be associated with development of a tumor which is given the name of alveolar rhabdomyosarcoma. Alveolar rhabdomyosarcoma. Example number four, which to my mind happens to be a high yield example, is going to be a translocation which is taking place between chromosomes 11 and 22. This is what is going to be associated with, again, a novel chimeric protein which is responsible for the coming together of the EWS and the FL1 gene, something that I've talked about in orthopedics in detail, and the tumor is Ewing sarcoma. What the examiners used to do traditionally was, they used to ask you a translocation, friends, and they expected you to answer the tumor associated with it. The current trend of the paper is they would give you any example of these tumors and they would expect you to be familiar with the mechanism by which that cancer is being caused. So in case of follicular lymphoma and Burkitt's lymphoma, there is an overactivity of a specific molecule. But in case of synovial sarcoma, alveolar rhabdomyosarcoma, Ewing sarcoma or CML, there is a new type of protein that is causing a cancer. So the mechanism is presence or formation of a novel chimeric protein. If I am talking about decrease in differentiation, classical example of this happens to be associated with translocation 1517. This is going to be associated with a cancer which is given the name of AML-M3. AML-M3 is, as we are going to be talking about in hematology in detail, also known by the other name of acute promyelocytic leukemia. What I can help you understand is that because of this specific translocation, the translocation is responsible for causing decrease in the endogenous activity of vitamin A. Where once vitamin A cannot function properly, the cells will not be able to differentiate. If cells do not differentiate, there is going to be a blood cancer, acute promyelocytic leukemia. If we understand this fact, it's fairly easy for us to understand the concept for the treatment of the patient as well. Natural vitamin A, endogenous vitamin A is not able to function properly in this patient. I want the cells to differentiate. So the important pharmacology link is, I give this individual vitamin A in high doses from outside. Biochemistry link, vitamin A is existing in different forms. The form of vitamin A which is most effective for this patient is all trans-retinoic acid. So once you are giving all trans-retinoic acid to this individual, the cells are now going to differentiate. If the cells differentiate, the individual is going to be getting treatment from the cancer. So ATRA therapy is what, as our books make a mention of the fact, is the first and the important classical example of differentiation therapy. The name tells you everything, friends. Once you give this molecule as a therapy, cells are able to differentiate properly. So ATRA therapy is an example of differentiation therapy. Where do we use it? We use it for the treatment of a patient who is having AML-M3. And we also need to understand that AML-M3 is associated with which translocation? 1517. Be familiar with the fact for an add-on point. First example of differentiation therapy is ATRA, all trans-retinoic acid. But if this therapy fails, you have a use of a heavy metal which can be done in these patients, which is given the name of arsenic trioxide. So if you understand the concept, then it's easier for you to make a drug which is going to hit its target and treat your patient. So these are the different mechanisms, and all of them are exceptionally high yield points for your exam, which you need to understand are going to be contributed because of presence of the chromosomal abnormality, particularly the rearrangement of the genes. I want you to be familiar with a simple concept. Gene rearrangement is one of the most important mechanisms which is responsible for causing development of lymphoid neoplasms. Why? You see, when I am talking about lymphoid neoplasms, the cancers are going to be affecting which cells? Lymphoid cells. So B lymphocytes and T lymphocytes. In a normal person like you and me, the B and the T lymphocytes have to come in contact with different shapes and different types of antigens. So the B cell receptor and the T cell receptor, they continuously have to go changes so that the shape of the receptor can fit in with the antigen. Continuously have to go changes so that the shape of the receptor can fit in with the antigen. Any cell, any receptor which is undergoing lot of changes, there is a higher chance that sometimes a problem or a mistake takes place. So there is going to be development of a mutation, and therefore lymphoid neoplasms are commonly associated with the presence of something like the chromosomal abnormalities, particularly the gene rearrangements. Out of all the chromosomal abnormalities, remember the fact what I've highlighted over here for you, translocation happens to be the commonest effect, particularly associated with the lymphoid malignancies. If I'm talking about mechanism number 2, this is going to be deletion. So classically, this is something that is going to be causing an involvement of, I can help you understand, tumor suppressor genes. Now in a normal cell, you have 2 copies of tumor suppressor gene. Suppose one copy is going to get inactive for whatever reason, and there is a second copy which is going to get deleted. That means both the copies are non-functional, and if both the copies are non-functional, this cell or the tissue is going to be having a higher chance of getting converted into a cancer. Mechanism number 3 can be given the name of amplification, best understood with this diagram. If I'm talking about a normal chromosome, this is the presence of a gene that I want you to be familiar with. So let me just highlight it. Suppose there is going to be amplification. Amplification means what? Number of copies of the gene is going to increase. It can stay on the chromosome. Therefore, you are going to be having a higher thickness of the gene which can be stained over here. So this is going to be given the name of homogeneously stained region. More number of gene copies present on the chromosome itself, so more thickness that you see, homogeneously stained region, or the extra number of copies of the gene can get separated from the chromosome and they are going to appear separately. This is what is going to be given the name of double minutes. So whenever there is going to be an over amplification, whenever there is going to be an over expression or increase in number of copies of a gene, these are the two mechanisms by which they can be made out in an analysis. Now classical example of an amplified gene that I wish you to be familiar with is going to be given the name of N-MYC gene. This is what is going to be associated with a tumor that is going to be given the name of neuroblastoma. And a second example that I wish you to be familiar with over here is going to be given the name of HER2 gene, which is going to be associated with a patient who is going to be suffering from breast cancer. These amplifications are something that you can actually pick up with the help of the chromosomal or the genetic analysis, and subsequently they can be useful for making a diagnosis as well as for deciding the treatment of the patient as well. So those are the two mechanisms that you must keep in mind so far as amplification is concerned. If I'm talking about something like aneuploidy, the name gives you a hint. Euploidy means you are going to be having the exact number of copies, which can be something like N, 2N, 3N, 4N, so on and so forth. Aneuploidy means number of copies of the chromosome is not exact number or replica of the haploid. So if there is going to be an extra chromosome, and suppose this extra chromosome contains a proto-oncogene, that means overall the number of proto-oncogene becomes more, high chances of cancer. Suppose the number of copies is less, and this chromosome which is now absent was having a tumor suppressor gene. So now again the same problem, deficiency of tumor suppressor gene. Now also there can be a high risk of development of cancer. So aneuploidy is what is going to be associated with the development of the different types of cancers which can be seen over here. Additionally, we need to be familiar with the concept of what is given the name of microRNAs and cancers. Now microRNAs, that's a burning topic these days. What you need to understand over here is a simple fact. MicroRNAs are actually single-stranded RNAs. They are small in the sense that they are going to be 21 to 22 nucleotides in length, and please remember the basic fact, biochemistry knowledge, they are non-coding in nature. I want you to understand a basic fact. When I am representing a microRNA, this is how I would represent it. MicroRNA is going to get activated because of the presence of a cytoplasmic protein which is given the name, or an enzyme which is given the name of dicer. This activated microRNA is going to be acting in combination or in synergism with a molecule that is given the name of RISC. RISC standing for RNA induced silencing complex. So what is going to be seen, friends, is going to be the microRNA which is activated and the RISC, the RNA inducing silencing complex. What they are going to be doing is they will inhibit some kind of a target mRNA. They inhibit the activity of the target mRNA. So first fact that I want you to be familiar with is with the concept of something like the microRNA. What exactly is this? What does it require? Dicer. What does it require? RISC. And what is the main function? This will inhibit any target mRNA. Suppose the target over here happens to be a tumor suppressor RNA. So this microRNA, if it is inhibiting a tumor suppressor RNA, will now increase the risk of cancer. Such a microRNA is what is going to be given the name of oncomere. Oncomere, easy for you to understand, onco or cancer causing miRNA. And the example of this kind of a onco miRNA that I want you to be familiar with over here is what is going to be given the name of MIR, that is going to be 155. This is something that is classically seen in case of a patient who is going to be suffering from a B-cell lymphoma. B-cell lymphoma. So if the target happens to be a tumor suppressor mRNA, and if that is what is going to be inhibited, the microRNA can cause a cancer. So it is given the name of onco-miRNA, and the clinical example which is important, MIR 155. Similarly, you can understand that there can be a second category of microRNAs which are given the name of tumor suppressor microRNAs. And the best example of the tumor suppressor microRNAs I can share in front of you happens to be microRNA 15 and microRNA 16. So the name gives you a simple hint. They will reduce the chances of cancer formation. Suppose these MIR 15 and 16 get deleted, chances of cancer will increase. And the example of a cancer which I wanted to be familiar with is CLL. These are not routine questions. Please understand the fact. They will straight away take you to place like Pondicherry, Jibmer. They can take you to PGI. They can bring you to AIIMS Delhi. I just wanted to understand the concept with regards to microRNA. Additionally, suppose there is a patient who is having a mutation in dicer. So the microRNA will not get converted into its active form, and these are the individuals who are going to be having a high chances of development of the gonadal tumors. So testicular tumors, ovarian tumors are more commonly seen if there is going to be a dicer mutation. A new concept that is important for you to pick up over here happens to be the concept of chromothripsis. Don't cram this, understand it very easily. Chromo means chromosome, thripsis means breakdown or shattering. So what is happening over here is that sometimes the chromosomes, as you are going to be observing on the left side, are going to be having a breakdown, and this is typically usually at the time of something like maybe a replication, and now the chromosomes are going to fuse with a non-homologous one. That means there is going to be a chromosome breakdown, different fragments, and there is going to be a bad fusion, I can say, which is going to be responsible for the formation of these types of abnormal chromosomes. Now, because of the abnormal chromosome fusion over here, there can be an overactivity of something like a proto-oncogene, so high chances of cancer. There can be an underactivity of a tumor suppressor gene, so high chances of cancer. So point you need to be familiar with this, chromothripsis, the word is to be remembered as chromosome shattering, and this concept of chromosome shattering these days is very, very importantly associated with a tumor like glioma. You also associated with a bone tumor that I have discussed with you in a separate section in detail, which is going to be given the name of osteosarcoma. So just be familiar with that concept of osteosarcoma and glioma associated with chromothripsis. And another hot burning topic for the exams that we can be asked over here is the concept of epigenetics. Epigenetics is simply an example of a reversible change in the DNA which is occurring, please remember, and that's a micro link, biochemistry link, which I wanted to be familiar with over here, which is taking place without mutation. So this is an example of a reversible change, but this is something which can be transmitted from one generation to the other. So it's a heritable change, reversible in nature, but this is taking place without any mutation. Classically, there are two mechanisms, and that is what has already been asked as a question in the exam. You can be having a mechanism which is given the name of DNA methylation, or you can be having an alteration in the activity of the histones. So DNA methylation, and what I can make a mention of over here, histone modification, which is usually associated with something like the acetylation over here, is what is going to be associated with epigenetics. Now, why is epigenetics such an important topic these days? Is because of the mechanisms, obviously. It is also seen that nowadays there are a lot of genes which are going to be having a change in their nature because of the epigenetic influence, and they have been very, very importantly associated with certain types of cancers. So if you look at those genes, we just need to be familiar with the important examples, and some of the common ones which are strongly associated include SNF5. This is 100% associated with malignant rhabdoid tumor, and that's a very, very potential question for your exam because of its strong association with malignant rhabdoid tumor, particularly if you have a target of cracking a tertiary care institute exam. We do have the involvement of something like MLL1. MLL over here stands for mixed lineage leukemia gene. So MLL1 is associated with acute leukemias, particularly in case of children. Now, whenever we are talking about acute leukemias, we understand that they can be of two subtypes: acute lymphoblastic leukemia as well as acute myeloid leukemia. So both ALL as well as AML are associated with, and that is what I want you to remember, the MLL1 gene, which is going to be altered as an epigenetic gene. If I'm talking about MLL2, this is what is going to be associated with development of follicular lymphoma in almost, and that is what you can again appreciate over here, friends, 90% of the individuals with follicular lymphoma. Now, I don't want you to get confused with respect to MLL1 and MLL2. So my way or my trick of helping you to remember that is, when you see MLL2, how many L's are there, friends? L, L2, total 3. When you write the name of follicular lymphoma, L, L, another L. So 3 L's. MLL2 is what you associate with follicular lymphoma, and that is in as high as 90% of the individuals. MLL1, acute leukemias, particularly in case of children. Why is MLL an important thing for us to understand with respect to pharmacology? Any kind of a cancer which is having MLL is usually associated whenever the individual has already been given a drug like the topoisomerase inhibitors. A secondary leukemia which is developing in a person after the administration of topoisomerase inhibitors is usually going to be having a poor prognosis. So MLL1 gene is associated with acute leukemias in case of children, but please remember it's a bad thing for a child to have it because this is going to be associated with a faster rate of growth and a poorer prognosis. Just for the sake of completion, I can talk about something like the CREB-P, that is what is going to be associated with the presence of a mutation, and this kind of a mutation is what I want you to be familiar with, which is going to be associated with the diffuse large B-cell lymphoma. For the sake of a completion, if I can help you understand the association over here with something like ARID1A. ARID1A is associated with clear cell ovarian cancer in almost like 60% of the individuals, also associated with a high risk of development of endometrial carcinoma. We do have the role, just for the sake of completion, of DNMT3A associated with AML. Now because the list is huge, so personally what I would want you to be familiar with is the association of SNF1, because 100%. I want you to be associated the association with MLL1, acute leukemia in case of children, and I want you to remember about MLL2, which is going to be associated with follicular lymphoma. So those are my 3 personal preferences with respect to the epigenetic changes. So these are the important example of the information that we need to remember with respect to the cancer genes and the kind of changes that we understand now, the driver mutation, the passenger mutations, the mechanisms by which they take place. And please remember, the examples that I shared with you are of